Next speaker is the Honorable Leader of the Asia-wide franchise, one of the most confident men in Asia in the franchise industry, Mr. Albert Kong. Please turn on your microphone and camera, and we will hear you. And I really appreciate that you join us. It's evening now already in Singapore. Nice to see you, Mr. Albert.
Nice to see you, Vasil. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's start with your presentation.
Right. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes.
Great, great. Okay. I'll leave it in this mode so that it's easier to control. Okay. So good morning, evening, afternoon to all the participants. I'm sitting in my office on the 9th floor of this building called AZAC in the middle of Singapore. I have only 10 minutes, so I will speak quite quickly. But if you have questions, it's always good to pose them to me. I think all of us participate in many webinars and conferences, so you always get more when you ask questions. All right, so very quickly, I will talk about, in very broad strokes, franchising across Asia. Now, as Vasil has said, today I will concentrate on Southeast Asia. I think all of us know that currently there are 10 nations in Southeast Asia. The acronym used is ASEAN, A-S-E-A-N, which is an association of Southeast Asian nations. That's the acronym. Yeah. So, and you will realize that different countries are at different stages of growth. Some, like Singapore, have already, achieved a developed nation status. Some are still, moving towards that direction. And if you were to read reports, even as recent as last year, many people, many economists, and many gurus, they are all saying that the next region that will grow tremendously in spite of the pandemic will still be Southeast Asia, because of the population, especially the young population, who are all aspiring to have more choices, whether it's food, especially pizza and burgers, right, and fashion and all sorts of new things. Yeah. So it's good that people aspire for more choices and a better quality of life, right? Now, in Southeast Asia, other than Malaysia and Vietnam, basically most of the other nations do not have franchise-specific regulation, okay? Like in Singapore, most, like Thailand, Philippines, we normally work on what we call code of conduct. So we regulate ourselves. So we call it self-regulation, meaning the association and their members, they agree on a code of ethics, and they will so-called behave themselves. Unlike America, unlike Australia, unlike China, most of the countries here, except for Vietnam and Malaysia, most of the nations in Southeast Asia do not have any franchise-specific law, right? Now, for those of you who are familiar with me, normally my advice to franchisors and franchisees is, in franchising, just like doing business, you need to have a lot of common sense. And one way I summarize for franchisors and franchisees before they move into another country, or even within their own country, but especially when they go international, maybe they use the letter C to prompt them to remember certain things. So, for example, on this slide, the country's condition, especially the PEST, which stands for the political environment, the economic environment, the social environment, and the technology environment, right? So if for example, Afghanistan, the country is still not considered very stable. You know, the economy is still quite bad, you know, and socially in terms of spending power, you know, and the kind of diet that they are used to, you know, may not be so appropriate for many brands to go there. Yeah. Of course, things like religion, things like even communication, things like whether they even have 4G, you know, or 3G, you know, for communication. So all these are considerations. Another C will be the contract, meaning the degree of government control, you know, the kind of taxes, the kind of levies that they will impose on a foreign firm, you know, or on the repatriation of royalties back to your country, you know. So these are all very important. I'm sure your lawyers will tell you. Communication can even mean translation. I've given many examples of foreign brands that have translated wrongly, you know, and in Southeast Asia, many dialect groups. Sometimes a translation is suitable for one dialect group, but the sound may be very offensive to another dialect group. So even these things must be carefully researched. If not, you will just cause your end consumer to feel offended, and you know, your franchisee then will not get any business, right? Another C will be the consumers, whether they have the spending power, you know, whether in the first place they even like your food, you know. For example, if you go to a Muslim country, then, you know, whether it's halal, whether, you know, even the ingredients you use, you know, whether they have certain ingredients or things that are related to a certain animal, all these things are very important. Another C will be the corner, meaning the kind of location you need, right? So for example, in Singapore, because it's a small nation, property is very expensive. So if you were to bring a franchise like Marche from Switzerland to Singapore, it will be hard because Marche uses a lot of space, you know, space for salad, space for dessert, space for coffee, space for beer, space for seafood, space for other types of meat, you know, etc., etc. So they take up a lot of space. So it will be tough because the rentals will be very, very expensive. Yeah. Another C will be the competitors. And then in many countries, I'm sure you know that there are certain coffee shops that look like Starbucks, but they are not Starbucks. There are certain places that look like KFC, but they may not be KFC. So it's important that you do your homework, you know, so that you don't come, or you know, or you don't get your franchisee to be complaining to you that the registration of your trademark is not approved because there are already a lot of people using something similar, you know. And another C, which is very important, is the kind of franchisee you can get, you know, whether they have the right capital, whether they are really committed. I'm sure you have heard of cases whereby some franchisees, actually, they didn't tell you that their brother or sister are already operating a competitor brand. And this person, maybe his motive is to really learn from you, and then maybe 1 year later, 1 year after becoming your franchisee, say bye-bye to you, because now they have got your operating manual, they go back to their brother, and then they have a big leap forward because, you know, they can improve on their own systems. So all these things are important to check. Yeah. Now, another thing I often emphasize is adaptation. You cannot be so stubborn and say that everything in your franchise is sacrosanct and cannot be localized. Of course, in franchising, we know that standardization is very important, you know, but at the same time, just like McDonald's in India, they won't sell beef because most of the Indians don't eat beef, so they have to adapt, right? You know, and even the size of the dish, you know, if you serve the same portion as Americans, then most of the customers in Southeast Asia will not finish the dish because it's too much for them, you know. They're smaller in size and they are used to just eating not so heavily, right? So all these things are important. If not, your franchisee can't make money because the cost of food and the wastage, and also, turning away customers because they won't come back because they feel that your portions are just too big. All this will affect the profitability of your franchisee, and then they will close shop, right? So those are just quite commonsensical, but very important, right? So this is just one slide to share a little bit about my company, but I welcome comments and questions from you. Thank you, and I pass it back to Vasil. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albert. So could you say the one question for me? It's what is happening now in Singapore in the franchise industry? Are you waiting for the autumn show, FLA, which is happening every year?
Yes, we will still do the show, but looking at our neighbors, and many of them are still not allowed to travel. So our plan currently, and it is subject to change because who knows whether there will be, another wave. But we have been very, very fortunate. We thank God for that. We have been very, very fortunate. Up to today, we have, less than 150 deaths, so it's very well controlled. Everybody is eating out. Every table, you cannot have more than 8 people. So the confidence is going up. But as far as the show is concerned, our current plan is for local franchisors, we will give them a physical booth, assuming that there's no second wave of the virus. And then for overseas franchisors, they will do a virtual booth. So through the portal, foreign franchisors can still exhibit, but it's a virtual booth, and they will interact through the portal. Whereas local franchisors based here, they are allowed to exhibit physically. Yeah. But like I said, this is the current plan, and hopefully we continue to stay safe and we don't have suddenly, another wave. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Albert.
Thank you.
Look so strong and so healthy. Please continue. Go on the same. See you on the conference in Singapore. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good evening. Yes.